All right, so get this. We're diving into some news that really caught our eye. North Korean troops, potentially in Russia. Yeah, you heard that right. It's a bit of a head-scratcher.
It's definitely a surprise.
Huge implications. We're talking potential shifts in the war in Ukraine, global power dynamics, the whole 9 yards. So we've got reports coming out, official statements, reactions from all corners of the world. It's a lot to unpack, but that's what we're here for.
Absolutely.
To break it down, make sense of it all.
Let's dive in.
South Korea, they're not mincing words. They're demanding Russia pull back, like immediately. We're talking about a reported 1,500 North Korean soldiers.
Including special forces.
Yes, special forces.
Yeah.
This is serious stuff.
A major escalation.
And South Korea, they're not taking it lightly. They summoned the Russian ambassador, laid it all out, basically said, look, this isn't a suggestion, it's a demand.
Right.
And they even hinted at, well, let's just say they're ready to respond with all measures available if things escalate. That's a direct quote from their Vice Foreign Minister, Kim Hong-kyun.
Strong words.
Understatement of the year, right?
It definitely signals how seriously they're taking this. But it's interesting. There's a carefulness to the wording. They're sending a clear warning, no doubt. But also, there's a sense of wanting to avoid making things worse.
Right, walking that tightrope, trying to de-escalate while still making their stance clear.
Exactly.
Delicate balance. Now, the Russian ambassador, Georgy Zinoviev, he had something to say too. He insisted that any cooperation with North Korea is, and I quote, within the framework of international law. Sounds reassuring, right?
On the surface, perhaps.
But here's the catch. He didn't actually confirm or deny whether North Korean troops are fighting in Ukraine.
Ah, the classic non-denial denial.
It leaves a lot of room for interpretation, doesn't it?
It does. And that's where things get murky. This ambiguity, it fuels misinformation, propaganda, which, let's be honest, has been a constant factor in this conflict.
Makes it tough to separate fact from fiction.
Exactly.
And then we have the Kremlin. Their take basically, don't worry, be happy.
Downplaying the situation.
To the max.
Which seems to contradict, well, pretty much everyone else's reaction.
Yeah, there's definitely a disconnect there.
This isn't just some minor diplomatic hiccup. The implications are huge. This could have a ripple effect across the entire world.
And it might not stop there. Some reports are suggesting that this isn't just a small contingent of troops. We could be talking up to 12,000 North Korean soldiers.
That's a significant force.
Not just a symbolic gesture.
Exactly.
So the question becomes, why is North Korea even doing this?
Well, it's likely a mix of things. Strengthening their alliance with Russia, that's a big one.
Right, showing they've got each other's backs.
And of course, there's always a question of what they're getting in return.
Right, quid pro quo.
Financial aid, military equipment, who knows?
Yeah.
But there's definitely something in it for them.
This isn't charity work, that's for sure.
No, definitely not.
And the international community, well, they're not exactly standing on the sidelines. Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, he called this a significant escalation.
NATO's not known for overreacting.
Understatement of the century, maybe?
This development poses a real challenge for NATO. They've been a key player in supporting Ukraine. And the potential for this conflict to expand, well, it's a major concern.
Nobody wants to see that happen. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, he's not taking this lying down either. He's urging NATO to explore countermeasures.
Which could mean a lot of things.
Sanctions, military options, the whole spectrum.
It's a complex situation. Any action taken will have consequences. It's a delicate balance.
For sure. And the UK's foreign minister, David Lammy, he didn't hold back either. Called the growing ties between Russia and North Korea reckless and illegal.
Those are strong words. Coming from a key international player, it suggests a potential shift in their diplomatic approach.
Away from appeasement.
Towards a more confrontational stance.
And it's not just the UK. The US and Japan have also voiced their concern.
This isn't just a regional issue anymore.
It's global, with the potential to draw in more and more countries.
A tangled web of alliances and interests.
And then there's China. They're calling for de-escalation. But they've been curiously silent on North Korea's involvement.
China's in a tricky spot. They've got their own interests in the region, trying to maintain the relationship with Russia, but also not wanting to rock the boat too much.
Right. Walking that tightrope again.
Their next move will be interesting to watch.
For sure. So what does all of this mean for the war in Ukraine itself?
Well, a lot of experts are saying that throwing North Korea into the mix could make things even more unpredictable.
An already complex situation becoming even more volatile.
Exactly.
And then there's the question of sanctions. North Korea is already under a ton of them. Will more sanctions actually make a difference?
It's a valid point. There's always the risk of unintended consequences.
Squeezing them too hard could backfire.
North Korea isn't exactly known for playing by the rules.
That's putting it mildly.
And then there's the big question of how effective North Korean troops would actually be in this conflict.
They haven't been in a major war in decades.
Their equipment, their training, it might not be up to par.
And let's not forget the language barrier.
All valid points. There's a lot we don't know.
It's a puzzle with a lot of missing pieces.
And one that's constantly changing.
It's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while someone's shuffling it.
A pretty good analogy.
And amidst all of this, it's easy to lose sight of the human cost. What happens to the North Korean soldiers if they're captured or killed?
What about the civilians caught in the crossfire?
These are real people.
With real lives.
It's a sobering thought.
It is.
This isn't just about geopolitics.
It's about people.
And the potential for even more suffering.
A reminder that peace is the ultimate goal.
Absolutely.
Feels like we're at a turning point, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's like South Korea demanding this withdrawal, Russia not really giving a straight answer, the Kremlin trying to brush it all off, and NATO, well, they're definitely on edge.
Not to mention all the other countries voicing their concerns.
Yeah, it's like the whole world's holding its breath.
It's a pivotal moment.
Feels like we've stepped into, I don't know, some kind of alternate reality.
Uncharted territory, for sure.
And it begs the question, right? Is this like a new Cold War brewing?
It's a possibility.
Or is it like some desperate move by a power that's, maybe not what it used to be?
It's hard to say for sure.
But either way, it's unsettling.
Absolutely. This has the potential to reshape everything. The global landscape, alliances, the whole balance of power.
Yeah, if this alliance between Russia and North Korea, if it actually solidifies, what does that say to other countries?
It could embolden other authoritarian regimes, make them think, hey, we can get away with more, we've got backup.
And that's a scary thought.
It is. It raises questions about the future of international relations.
Right, like are we going back to this Cold War-style division? Democracies on one side, autocracies on the other.
It's a real possibility.
And what about like global security? Does this increase the risk of, I don't know, nuclear proliferation? Or even like WMD terrorism?
Those are valid concerns.
It feels like the stakes just got a lot higher.
Definitely. This situation has the potential to spiral out of control.
Beyond Ukraine.
Absolutely. Triggering new conflicts in other parts of the world.
And with all the alliances and interests involved.
It's impossible to predict where it could lead.
It's a lot to take in, I'm sure our listeners are feeling it too.
It's easy to get lost in the geopolitics.
All the strategic analysis.
But we can't forget there are real people at the heart of this.
Absolutely. Real people whose lives are being torn apart by this war.
And their stories deserve to be heard.
So let's try to break this down a bit. Where do we think the biggest long-term consequences of this alliance might play out?
Well, one area that's already feeling the heat is the Korean Peninsula itself.
Right. Makes sense.
This is likely to escalate tensions between North and South Korea. Set back any progress towards peace or reunification.
Yeah. Any hope for diplomacy, reconciliation?
It all becomes much more difficult.
And what about North Korea's nuclear ambitions? Could this give them the leverage they need to, accelerate their weapons program? Or conduct more tests?
It's a real possibility, something the international community needs to be prepared for.
It's a dangerous game they're playing.
It is.
And then there's the Asia-Pacific region as a whole.
This alliance could embolden China.
To be more assertive.
Exactly.
In the South China Sea.
Towards Taiwan.
We could see a military buildup in the region.
Leading to more instability, more potential for conflict.
Nobody wants to see that happen.
But it's a real risk.
And we can't forget about the economic implications.
Right. This alliance could disrupt global supply chains.
Especially for things like essential minerals, technologies.
Things that are vital for modern economies.
North Korea has resources. Russia has energy.
Together, they could exert significant leverage.
On global markets.
It's a potential recipe for economic instability.
So it seems like the consequences of this alliance, they're multifaceted.
Incredibly complex.
And potentially far-reaching.
But it's important to remember, these are potential scenarios, not guarantees.
Right. The future isn't written yet.
We still have the power to shape it.
And that's where our listeners come in. What do you think about all of this? What questions are on your mind?
We want to hear from you.
Share your thoughts, your perspectives.
On social media, in the comments.
Let's keep this conversation going.
Because your voices matter.
We need to make sense of this together.
And hopefully find a path towards a more peaceful and just world. So many potential consequences we've talked about, short-term, long-term. It's a lot.
It is. And, I think it all boils down to this one question. Is this the start of something much bigger?
Yeah.
Are we on the brink of, like, a new global conflict?
That's the question, isn't it? The million-dollar question. And honestly, I don't think anyone has the answer right now.
Yeah.
We're in uncharted waters here. This situation, it could reshape the world in ways we can't even imagine yet.
That's overwhelming.
It is.
Like, you feel kind of powerless. Like you're just watching this train barreling down the tracks, and you can't do anything to stop it.
I get that feeling.
But that's why. That's why I think what we're doing here is so important. These conversations, these
Right.
deep dives, we need to have them.
Yeah.
Challenge our assumptions. Try to make sense of this crazy world.
Absolutely. We need to do this together.
Yeah.
Nobody has all the answers. No single person, no single country. But if we share our perspectives, listen to each other, work together, maybe, just maybe, we can figure this out.
Find a way forward.
Exactly.
So, to our listeners out there, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on all of this? What's going through your mind?
Share your insights, your questions
On social media,
in the comments.
let's keep this conversation going
Because your voices matter.
more than ever. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged.